My life, before the great unraveling, was a carefully constructed testament to faith. From my teenage years, every step felt deliberate, every choice I made was a conscious alignment with a path I believed was laid out by God Himself. I was Daniel, the good son, the one who seemed to get everything right. Sundays found me serving at church, my voice a steady bass in the choir, my hands ready to help wherever needed. During the week, I led a small Bible study, poring over scriptures, eager to share insights to build up. My prayers, I confess, felt less like a desperate plea and more like a detailed checklist of gratitude, a well-oiled conversation with a God I was sure I understood. I lived within the comforting walls of certainty, convinced that my diligent efforts were both an expression of my love for God and a guarantee of His unwavering favor. Then came the scholarship. A chance to study abroad, a prestigious program in a bustling European capital. It was an answer to prayer, a validation of my efforts, or so I thought. The departure was bittersweet. Hugs from my parents, blessings from my pastor, promises to stay true. I boarded the plane, not just with suitcases, but with the entire edifice of my carefully cultivated faith, ready to transplant it to new soil. The city hit me like a revelation. It was a kaleidoscope of ancient stone and neon light, a cacophony of languages and endless possibilities. Unlike the quiet, predictable rhythm of my hometown, this place thrummed with an energy I'd never known. At first, I was meticulous. I found a small, quiet church tucked away on a cobbled street, its stained glass casting muted light on worn pews. I attended services, found a corner in the university library for my daily quiet time, and wrote long, descriptive emails home, reassuring everyone that Daniel was still Daniel. But the city was also full of glittering distractions. They weren't overt temptations at first, more like subtle background noise that gradually amplified. The late-night study sessions with international students often bled into conversations that stretched into the early hours, then into impromptu gatherings at lively pubs. I'd never been much of a drinker, but a pint or two seemed harmless, a way to socialize, to fit in. The intellectual discussions were stimulating, challenging my assumptions about faith, culture, and the world. My prayers grew shorter, less detailed, often mumbled just before sleep. A habit more than a conversation. The weight of gratitude felt lighter, the checklist shorter. The erosion was imperceptible at first, like the slow wearing down of a river stone. One week, I missed my quiet time. Next, I skipped church, telling myself I needed the extra sleep, or that I had too much coursework. My Bible, once a constant companion, started gathering dust on my bedside table, its worn leather a silent reproach. The intellectual challenges I'd initially relished began to chip away at the foundations of my certainty, not strengthening my faith, but sowing seeds of doubt I hadn't known how to process. The gap between the life I was living, the late nights, the easy laughter, the growing disinterest in spiritual disciplines, and the person I thought I was supposed to be grew wider with each passing week, an ever-increasing chasm. A deep, gnawing shame began to set in. It wasn't a sudden plunge into despair, but a creeping mildew that covered everything. I started to tell myself stories. God is disappointed in you, Daniel. You've squandered the grace you were given. The gentle, guiding voice I'd always associated with my faith, the one that affirmed my choices and celebrated my devotion, slowly morphed into a harsh, relentless accuser. It whispered insidious untruths. You thought you were so righteous, so good. Look at you now. You're a hypocrite. And the most chilling whisper of all, the one that resonated with the deepest fear of my heart. You have finally done it. You have lost God's love. I pulled away further, not just from my spiritual practices, but from anyone who might remind me of them. The thought of calling home filled me with dread. What would I say? How could I explain this stranger I was becoming? The shame became a heavy cloak, isolating me, convincing me that I was beyond redemption. I'd lost my way, yes, but more than that, I was convinced I had lost my very connection to the divine. My carefully constructed image of God as loving and merciful was replaced by an image of a cosmic scorekeeper, meticulously recording my transgressions, ready to cast me aside. The moment of truth came not in a dramatic, lightning strike fall, but in a quiet, lonely whisper that echoed the emptiness inside me. I was sitting on my bed, the room silent for the first time in months. The usual hum of the city, the distant sirens, the chatter from downstairs, All seemed to recede, leaving me suspended in an unnerving stillness. The weight of my choices felt crushing, not just heavy, but suffocating. I saw my actions not merely as mistakes, youthful indiscretions, or a period of experimentation. No, I viewed them as a deliberate turning away, a conscious rejection of the God I once knew, the God I had preached about, the God I had served. My mind fixated on the story of the prodigal son. I pictured him not just leaving, but losing his sonship, forfeiting his place, becoming an outsider irrevocably. And I was convinced I had done the same. I wasn't just a wanderer. I was an outcast. The beautiful narratives of grace I had once recited now felt like a cruel joke, meant for others, for those who hadn't strayed as far, fallen as hard, or sinned as deliberately as I believed I had. My heart ached with a loneliness so profound it felt physical, a vast echoing cave where God's presence used to be. The whisper, however, wasn't the voice of accusation. It was a small, fragile spark of something else, a memory, perhaps, of a love I once knew. It was the memory that propelled my hand to my phone, a sense of desperate urgency, overwhelming the fear and shame. I didn't call for money. I still had my scholarship funds, though they were dwindling faster than I cared to admit. I didn't call for a place to stay. The thought of returning home in this state was almost unbearable. I called for something far more fundamental, something I felt compelled to confess, to articulate, to make real. My father answered on the third ring, his voice calm, familiar, a steady anchor in my turbulent world. "Dad?" My voice cracked, raw and unfamiliar even to my own ears. "Daniel, son, it's good to hear from you. Everything all right?" I took a deep breath, the confession bubbling up, desperate to escape. "No, Dad. Nothing's all right. I just needed you to know. I'm not the person you think I am anymore." The words were out, clumsy and laden with all the guilt I carried. I then poured out a disjointed narrative of my past months, the missed services, the forgotten prayers, the parties, the growing distance from everything I'd once held sacred. I didn't go into graphic detail. I didn't need to. The feeling of utter failure, of having completely lost my way, saturated every word. I spoke of the shame, the conviction that I had let God down, let them down, that I had irrevocably damaged something precious. I ended with a hushed, trembling whisper. "I feel like I've lost everything, Dad. I feel like I've lost God." My father listened quietly, patiently. There were no interruptions, no gasps of disappointment, no hurried admonishments. The silence on the other end of the line after my confession was not judgmental, but profound. When I was finally done, when the wellspring of my confession had run dry, he spoke. His voice was gentle, infused with a warmth that traveled across the ocean and wrapped around my aching heart. He didn't scold me. He didn't express disappointment. He didn't even ask for more details. Instead, he just said, "Son, what you are feeling is not a new thought. People have felt this way for centuries. But listen to me carefully, Daniel. You have never stopped being my son. Not for a moment. And God's love isn't something you can earn or lose. It's a gift. It's always there, waiting for you to turn back to it. Always." His words were a balm, a faint whisper of truth cutting through the cacophony of my self-condemnation. They didn't instantly dissolve my shame, but they cracked open a window, allowing a sliver of light into the suffocating darkness I had built around myself. "You have never stopped being my son." The simplicity, the unwavering certainty of it, resonated deep within me, touching a place I thought was barren. It was the first breath of true hope I'd taken in months. Returning home was fraught with a mixture of apprehension and a fragile, burgeoning hope. I envisioned a house of judgment, a series of uncomfortable conversations, a list of expectations I knew I couldn't meet. Instead, what awaited me was not judgment, but a feast of love. My father met me at the airport, his arms opening wide, his eyes, usually so keen, now soft with an unspoken understanding. His hug was firm, grounding, a physical reassurance that I was indeed home. At the house, my mother had prepared my favorite meal, the table laden with dishes that smelled of comfort and belonging. They didn't ask about my mistakes. Not once. My father didn't interrogate me about the parties, the missed services, or the doubts that had plagued me. Instead, he spoke of how he had missed me, how quiet the house had been without my presence, how he had prayed for me every single day. My mother just embraced me again and again, her tender touch speaking volumes of unspoken love. It was in the warmth of that embrace, in the unasked questions, in the easy, forgiving laughter around the dinner table, that Daniel began to understand. I hadn't been cast out. I hadn't been disowned. I had just wandered. The unconditional love of my earthly father, a mirror of the divine, had been waiting, patient and unwavering, for me to find my way back. The shame began to recede, replaced by a profound, humbling gratitude. My first service back at my home church felt like a journey into a familiar yet entirely new landscape. I sat in my usual pew, the wood familiar beneath my fingers, the stained glass windows still casting their colored light. The liturgy, once rote, now held a fresh resonance. Then a song began, one I'd heard countless times before, but now the words hit me with a powerful, deep new meaning. My God, he runs to meet his children, arms open wide, no shame, no blame, just love. Tears streamed down my face, unbidden, unstoppable. It was a release, an epiphany. I realized that the crushing shame I had felt wasn't from God at all. It was a lie, an insidious seed planted by an accuser by my own fearful heart. The thought that God was punishing me, that he was disappointed and distant, was the very thing that had kept me away, that had built the wall between us. It was a false narrative that had imprisoned me in my own self-condemnation. The truth, stark and beautiful, pierced through the darkness. God hadn't been distant. He had been with me all along, waiting. Not waiting to condemn, but waiting to welcome. The moment I had turned my heart back, even in that whisper of a call to my father, I was welcomed home. Not because I had earned it back through penance or perfection, but because I had always belonged. My sonship wasn't conditional on my performance. It was a birthright, a gift freely given, irrevocably mine. That day, my faith was reborn, not as a checklist or a careful set of steps, but as a boundless ocean of grace. The journey had been painful, filled with self-inflicted wounds and the bitter taste of regret. But through it, I discovered a depth of love I could never have known existed within the confines of my previous understanding. I returned to my studies, to my life, carrying not the weight of perfection, but the lightness of forgiveness, and the profound, humbling knowledge that no matter how far I might wander, I am always, eternally, a beloved son. Don't forget to like this video if it encouraged you, subscribe for more powerful stories, and share with someone who needs to hear this message today. God's love is not a reward for job well done, but his gift to all he eagerly awaits you. Will you show up for the feast of love? Psalm 23, verse 5.